war in Donbass began in April 2014 between Ukrainian forces and pro-Russian rebels in the regions of Donetsk and Lugansk, collectively known as Donbass. On September 5, 2014, Ukrainian regulars and militias were ambushed south of the city of Shastia. This episode of the war became one of the most well-known ones, and the footage spread across the internet. This incident not only marked a critical moment in the conflict but also highlighted the complexities and brutal realities of the war. At the beginning of September 2014, the war had already been going on for several months. The success of Ukrainian forces in July 2014 had been overshadowed by the defeat in Ilovaisk in early September, where the army ended up in an encirclement and received a significant blow. At the same time, Ukraine lost control over the strategically important airport in Lugansk. After the separatists managed to knock out the Ukrainian armed forces surrounding the city of Lugansk, some units of the Ukrainian army began a hasty and unorganized retreat, leaving the line of combat contact. X week on September 4, 2014, the then president of Ukraine, Poroshenko, announced that on September 5 a ceasefire would be declared at 15:00 Moscow time if the Minsk Protocol, a ceasefire that would effectively halt the combat, was signed. There was a checkpoint near Shasty under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces, in which the 1st Separate Tank Brigade was located. On September 4, 2014, the brigade retreated from the checkpoint. However, other Ukrainian troops located near the checkpoint were not notified about this. By this time, fighters of the Lugansk People's Republic militants already had information about the empty checkpoint, and on September 5, 2014, the separatists took control of the checkpoint. The fighters began equipping the checkpoint with fortifications and equipment in the form of a T-64 tank, which you can see on the video, in armored personnel carriers. By this time, the forces of the Ukrainian armed forces were retreating in a column from the village of Medalist towards the city of Shasty. The convoy with the Ukrainian military was traveling along the Medalist-Shastia highway, on the way of which there was the checkpoint controlled by the fighters. A few hours before the truce, at approximately 14, the impending hum of car engines was heard from the direction of the village of Medalist. By 14:30, equipment and soldiers of the Ukrainian army began to arrive at the checkpoint. The Ukrainian column consisted of the 2nd Company of the Adar Battalion Volyn. The 24th Separate Assault Battalion Adar was founded in May 2014 and named after the Adar River in the Lugansk region, where it was initially deployed. Adar was the 1st Territorial Defense Battalion of Ukraine, a series of units created in 2014 as the regular army was in a bad shape and struggled with corruption. The battalion played a significant role in fighting in Lugansk and recaptured areas previously held by rebels. The unit had some far-right members and was notorious for committing war crimes. Later in the battle, a unit of the 80th Separate Air Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces would also participate. On the LPR Lugansk People's Republic side were units of the Rapid Response Group Batman. It used the Batman emblem as a symbol. The unit was founded by Alexander Bednov, a Lugansk native who served in the Ukrainian Ministry of Interior and defected to the LPR after the war began in 2014. His group eventually became the 4th Battalion of the LPR. The subunits participating in combat were the Sabotage and Assault Reconnaissance Group Rusik and the Sabotage and Reconnaissance Group Patriot. The first one was also infamous for having members with far-right views, though they were oriented on Panslavism, while the ideological beliefs of Adar were rooted in Ukrainian nationalism. Its commander was Alexei Milchikov, a Russian citizen. The column of the Adar Battalion did not have any heavy vehicles and consisted of army trucks for transportation. While pretending to be Ukrainian troops, the LPR fighters asked to which battalion the column belonged. After receiving the reply, the rebels opened fire on the column. Besides ordinary weapons, they used the thermobaric rocket launcher RPOOA Shmel. The column consisted of 23 soldiers, while only 3 survived and fled. At 15:30, one of them reached the location of the Ukrainian 80th Separate Marine Brigade unit near Veselaya Gora and reported the death of personnel of the 24th Territorial Defense Battalion Adar. Having partially regrouped, fighters from the 80th Brigade attempted a counterattack. At approximately 15:55 of the same day, the unit began moving from Medalist to Shastia. The column had 5 armored personnel carriers and 2 tanks. The column moved at 16:10-16:15. Approaching the village of Tvedny Pesky, at 16:30-16:40, a unit of the 80th Separate Marine Brigade was ambushed. The column was fired upon from both sides from small arms, grenade launchers, machine guns, and a tank. The road was mined with TM-62 guided anti-tank mines. The report of the commander of the 5th Company noted that the unit carried out counter-ambush operations, fired from small arms, RPGs, ABTR-80 machine gun, and tank weapons. First, they took up a perimeter defense, repelling an enemy attack, and then went through an ambush while moving in vehicles, as the Ukrainian commander reported. According to Ukrainian sources, the paratroopers in this battle were able to knock out a tank and armored personnel carrier of the rebels, but suffered significant losses of dead and missing, including BTR-80 that was lost. It drove into a forest plantation at speed and burned there. According to pro-Russian sources, both columns were destroyed. Later, Ukrainian commanders claimed they came under fire of Russian Spetsnaz. This incident was indeed significant, as it received much attention in media of post-Soviet countries, particularly Russia and Ukraine. The footage of the ongoing events has been uploaded many times to Noodle magazine, a website for adults if you understand what I mean. The Sabotage and Assault Reconnaissance Group Ruzik not only gained much attention due to the ambush, but also built a reputation of an effective combat unit, which had previously also fought in different areas in Lugansk. In open warfare, it would have probably been difficult for the Rapid Response Group Batman to achieve results, as Ukrainian forces had more armored vehicles and similar equipment. The whole incident took place between 1430 and 1630 and resulted in 40 Ukrainian soldiers killed and 3 captured, while the LPR had 1 wounded rebel. This event marked the end of the first part of the war in Donbass, which was ended with a ceasefire signed in Minsk. However, it was not really implemented, and fighting would continue.